In this video, we're going to talk about the basics of radical numbers. So when we talk about a radical, or that's the term that I use most often, we're talking about different roots of an expression. So you typically talk about square root, cube root. You could talk about nth root for a certain sequence, for example. So that radical is just a specific root of an expression or a number. We can also see a radical written as an exponent where there's a fraction. So let's take a look at some examples here. Something we typically see early on is something like square root of 25, right? This is a pretty common notation for a radical or a root, and we see that there's no number in here. We just have the symbol here. And so if there's no number in here, it's assumed that this is square root. So we know that square root of 25 is equal to 5 because if we square both sides, well, the opposite of square root is to square something. So those are opposites or inverses, so they cancel each other out. So we get 25 on the left, and if you square the right side, well, 5 squared is 25 because 5 times 5 gives us 25. But negative 5 times negative 5 also gives us 25. So negative 5 squared would give us the same answer. So the square root of 25 is actually, we say, plus or minus 5. So anytime you're taking square root of a number specifically, we have to say plus or minus, right? So we use this symbol here to indicate both of these values as an answer. Now, another way you can see that radical or square root written is 25 to the power of 1/2. So if you see 1/2, that denominator 2 means what that tells us what root we're talking about. So this is a second root or square root of 25. So what if we see something with a third as our exponent? So 8 to the 1/3. Well, that's saying what multiplied by itself 3 times gives us 8. Just like up here, what multiplied by itself twice gives us 25. 5 times 5 is 25. And here, 2 times 2 times 2 would equal 8. So we can also write this as the cube root of 8, and this is how you're typically going to see it. Typing in either one in your calculator will give you the same answer. But because it's not square root now, it's a third or cube root, we have a 3 here to indicate that's what we're looking at. And so that gives us 2. But unlike what we have up here with square root, cube root of 8 does not also equal negative 2. Because here we did 2 times 2 times 2, and that gave us 8. Well, negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. And then positive 4 times a third negative 2 would give us negative 8. So notice how when it's square root, we do plus minus because this is an even root. But with an odd root, it doesn't work that way. So with an odd root, like this example here, if we do the cube root of negative 8, that would equal negative 2, because negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, like we explained before, is negative 8.